In this tutorial, I'm going to look at the binomial probability distribution function. When we consider the binomial probability distribution function, we'll be looking at experiments where we have a number of successes in a number of trials. And each trial will be having two possible outcomes, and those possible outcomes would have the same probability. So for the command for the binomial probability distribution function, we will be using a pbinom. And where we have the parentheses there, and the q, and then the size, and then probe, and then a lower tail. For the q there, we'll be putting a vector of the probabilities that we want, or you can just put a single value. And for the size, we'll be looking at the number of trials in the experiment. For the probe there is the probability of success at each trial. The lower tail there, if you specify that it is true, then you'll be calculating the probability that x is less than or equals to x. If you specify that it is false, then you'll be calculating the probability that x is greater than x. If you don't specify lower tail there, just leave it blank, we don't write anything that lower tail, then it assumes that you are saying that the lower tail is true, so you'll be calculating the probability that x is less than or equals to x. So in this tutorial, I'm going to use the example which is appearing on the right there. What it's saying is cross-fertilizing a red and white flower produces the red flowers 25% of the time. We cross-fertilize 5 pairs of red and white flowers and produce 5 offsprings. And then the question is saying, find the probability that A, there will be no red flower plants in the offspring. B, there will be at most 2 red flower plants in the offspring. And then C, there will be at least 3 red flower plants in the offspring. So for A there, we are finding the probability that x is equals to 0. For B, we are finding the probability that x is less than or equal to 2. And for C, we are finding the probability that x is greater than or equal to 3. So for the first one there, what we are saying is we are looking at the probability that x equals to 0. X equals to 0 when you are looking at the lower tail there, it will be x less than or equals to 0 because it will just give us the x equals to 0. So in this case, we type in for that probability, I'll type in my command pbinom, it's pbinom, and then open parenthesis, and we are saying we want for the probability less than or equals to 0, which gives us probability of x equals to 0. So I'll put my 0, then specify the size. The size in this case we are having is a 5 because we are repeating it 5 times. So the size is a 5. And then the probe, the probability of success. We are looking at the probability of having the red flower. That's the success in our view in this case. So the probability there will be 0.25, the probability of success. And then as I said, for less than or equals to, which is what you want, because we are saying we want probability of x equals to 0. So if we put less than or equals to 0, it gives us the probability of x equals to 0. We can leave the lower tail as it is, because if we don't specify, then it assumes that is true, and it will calculate the probability x equals x less than or equal to 0. So in this case, I press enter, and we get the probability as 0.2373047. So that's the solution for number A there. When I move on to the second part, the probability of x less than or equals to 2. And the command there is pbinom, open parenthesis, and then I specify we are looking at 2. Both are saying x less than or equals to 2. So I type in my 2, and the probability is 0.25, the probability of the success. And I should have written the size there because it's specified then size. So it should be the size is a 5, and then the probability comes after that. So it's 0.25 probability. And if I press enter, it gives us the probability that x is less than or equals to 2 is 0.8964844. I now move on to the last part there. Probability of x greater than or equals to 3. For x greater than or equals to 3 to suit the binomial when we are using RStudio, we said it calculates x less than or equals to x or x greater than x. But in this case, we are having greater than or equal to. So we have to change that greater than or equal to what we want. When you are having x greater than or equals to 3, if we want to write it as a greater than, both x greater than or equals to 3, and we are having 5 of them, that means we are saying 3, 4, 5. But 3, 4, 5, we can write it as x greater than 2. And then we would specify that our lower tail is false. So for probability of x greater than or equals to 2, it will give us the probability that x is greater than or equal to 3. So the command that we would use is pbinom, open parenthesis, and we are saying x greater than or equal to 2. And then specify the size. The size is 5. The probability of a success is 0.25. But in this case now we are saying lower tail. Because we are saying lower tail x greater than 2 is the one which gives us x greater than or equals to 3. So we would have our lower tail, lower and dot tail. And we are saying it's false. We are putting lower tail equals to false just because we want a greater than 2. Because if we don't specify that lower tail equals to false, it will calculate probability of x less than or equals to 2. So in this case, we want probability x greater than 2, which gives us the probability x greater than or equals to 3. So we have that, and we press enter, and it gives us that the probability that x is greater than or equals to 3 is 0.1035156.